couple of things have been happening in the last 6 or 7 years. We've been trying to work on practical issues and practical solutions to those issues from a community development point of view. So Josh has been really busy, as you can see, planting lots and lots and lots of trees. I would estimate that we've planted well over 1,000 to 1,500 trees in the last 5 or 6 years. And that would include the bamboos as well. So just real quickly, a synopsis of that are the trees and the bamboos, number one, do a significant thing in that they help us create microclimates. So Josh started by coming out here. He bought a laser pointer temperature gauge that he can point at a spot, and it tells him the temperature of that spot. So he went around during cold times, hot times, and was looking at that. And then we started planting, looking at different kinds of trees. And so the main one that we use are these eucalyptus trees. You've seen them around the groves here. There's a younger line right here that we'll go by and see, and there's a taller one there. Those are about 5 years. These are about 3 years old. The white blooms that you see, those are the ones that are about 5 years old. And those are planted close together. And so part of what happens is they create bioatmosphere themselves, like through transpiration. They breathe in air, they exhale just like we do, well, differently than we do, but it's the same kind of idea. And so this year we actually got to see that it worked. So we had a bit of a cold snap this year. We got a kind of a light freeze out here. But on 3/4 of the way through the garden, because of that work that was done and the other plants that are underneath and around it, halfway to 3/4 of the way through the garden, we didn't have a whole lot of freeze. Now on the other side where it's very exposed to the south and there's not a whole lot of cover of the bananas, they got bit pretty hard. So this idea really works. So the idea is that they're creating cooler temperatures in the summer, hopefully, and warmer temperatures in the winter. Now, the other thing that they're doing, of course, is providing us with food. And all of these trees through here are either providing food for animals or food for humans, and sometimes both. So this is a good and bad example right here, the avocado. Unfortunately, the bovines broke the fence down and ate Josh's avocado. So it is edible by the animals, but that wasn't on purpose. But the other plants that are around here, there's some mulberries up there in the parking area. There's bamboo here, and then I'll show you a little bit of silvopasturing up here with these trees. But these are our bovines right now. Brownie will soon be leaving us and going back home to Dr. Cruz's farm. We bottle fed him a couple years ago and got him to where he's very docile. He's a really good pet. But Dr. Cruz said he would take him back now. And then up here is Buford. He's our Southeast Asian water buffalo, and he's kind of our mascot, and we can ride him. JC has ridden him a few times. Ben has been training him really well, teaching him verbal communication and stuff, and he's been doing really well. So has Brownie. And so the big thing that they provide for us is manure for the gardens and stuff. So we can go in with a tractor and we can harvest that and use it in the gardens and make compost and things. So about 3 years ago, we widened this roadway. The roadway actually stayed the same, but we widened the right-of-way, I guess you would say, around the road. And the reason we did that is we wanted to grow food for the animals closer to them. And this is an example. If you look straight down through here, come over here, guys. Look straight down through here between the trees and the fence, and you see where the bovines and the goats have reached out and fed themselves. So this is called silvopasturing. So it's the idea that the animals can reach out. And in our situation, what we're trying to do is, I'll show you where we're going to move the bovines soon, but we want to rotate our animals. So part of killing parasites in the soil is rotating your animals and giving the soil time to rest and breaking the parasite cycle. But that would also give these trees a little more time to regrow as well. So that's a part of the plan as well. So you let them eat, and then then you take them out, the tree rests, and then it can grow new limbs and stuff, and then they can reach out and feed themselves again. And then I think it's TJ that's been topping the trees. Was that you, TJ?
No.
Somebody's been topping the tree, the tops out of them, and Jane, and it helps bush out the tree, makes it spread out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then we take those, of course, and feed them to the animals. And then the other trees on the other side and the shrubs can be used the same way. They're more cutting and throwing over into the pastures for the animals. So another thing that we've been working on, again, getting back to coming up with systems that work and that we can demonstrate to students, is tractors. So we have pig tractors and we have chicken tractors. These are an example of chicken tractors. Both of those are two different designs. I designed the A-frame. JC designed the round one and the dome-shaped one. And they both can be pulled either by humans or by a tractor. We usually use it like a carry-all or a tractor, just get in there and move them. And of course you can see behind the A-frame very well from this angle. See where the grass is brown, where they've dug, they've scratched, they eat, they feed themselves, as well as they go to the bathroom and they fertilize the pasture. And another application, it's not as needed here, but in some applications, they'll eat a lot of bugs and stuff. So we have a lot of ticks and things. In fact, we were talking about the guinea fowl earlier. I believe guinea fowl can eat their weight in ticks. It's just amazing how many that they can eat. Yeah, they're really big tick eaters. So right now we have the male and females together, getting ready for hopefully breeding and having new babies for next year. Up in another pasture, we won't go up there because of time, but we have 5 baby goats now, I believe. Or they're all born within the last 2 weeks. And then when you move up here, you'll see another dome-shaped chicken area, and that one is stationary. And that is, right now we have some of our laying hens in there. And then the fruit trees that you see, of course, are providing food. This is a pomegranate here. There are probably at least a dozen different variety of mulberry on the property, and probably 6 or 8 different variety of loquat as well. And you'll see all those as we come through. So Josh's whole idea is that there should be something to eat every month of the year on the property. And I would say that we probably average, providing our own fruits and vegetables, about 60%, 60 to 65%. And then meat, anywhere from 80% or more of the meat that we eat comes from the farm here as well. Sometimes it's even higher than 80%. This is the Peacock Palace. We have peacocks. As we come into the gardens, there's a variety of things going on. We have right here, example of permaculture, permanent agriculture. It's the idea that you plant perennials rather than annuals, and so you have food year round. So the idea there is there's work on the front end. There's a lot of work in planning and planting and making sure that the plants that are kind of working together and being symbiotic and helping each other. And so this is a really good example of that. We have guava, we have pineapple, we have papaya, which got a little bit by the cold this year, avocados, and this is a Peruvian cactus apple. Don't touch it. Those thorns will go through leather gloves. And then right back here, those are different kinds of yams, I believe, that have been growing there. And then if you guys want to taste something very different, this is Suriname cherry. You'll either love it or hate it. This is what the tropics know as cherries. So when I was in Haiti, this was cerise. They harvest them and smush them and make juice. We go in here, this is the gardens. Of course, we're getting to the end of the cool weather crop season. We'll be already working on summer crops. There's already sweet potatoes planted. A lot of this will be harvested while the students are here, and then some will be fed to the animals. As you all know, we went to raised beds about 3 years ago, and it's been a a real blessing to have the raised beds. They provide us with much more control over what we put in our gardens, and the nourishment that we put in the soil stays in the flower bed. It doesn't leach out, because if you put it on the ground, which Hart's been doing since 1981, it just leaches out. And so we started this process by doing a comparison. Josh started the first couple of beds down there, and over here grew in the ground, and treated them both the same, and had huge differences between the two in production and plant growth and all those things. So we've gone to raised beds. And now what we do with our students is we teach them, don't look at the material. This is really hard for people who come from very poor countries. They look at the material and go, oh, I couldn't do this there because we would use this to build a house. We understand that. So what we tell them is, use what's available. What are your resources that you have available? In Haiti, we had rocks everywhere. So I did this in Haiti, and I was teaching farmers how to make rock walls with basically taking some scrap lumber and filling it full of rocks, and then taking just like syrupy cement and pouring it in there and letting it set up, and then remove the forms, and you have like a little rock wall. And it worked pretty good. And if they couldn't afford that, then we did just what we call drywall rock stacking. You just take rocks, you can't walk on it, but it still will act as a berm to help hold the soil in place. This is always a big one with most people, is moringa. A lot of you have heard about moringa. It's considered the miracle tree. It is one of the most nutritious vegetables on the planet. If anybody wants to try it, we don't use sprays or chemicals or anything. It has a little bit of a kick to it. It's best eaten, like most greens are, most people don't know this, but most greens are best eaten raw or close to raw. As you cook any kind of green vegetable, the more you cook it, all of the nutrients and stuff either evaporate or go into the water. So if you do boil your vegetables a lot, you should figure out a way to use the water. And then the other big thing I like to tell my tours is that, as you see, we don't use a lot of chemicals, we don't spray or for weeds or bugs or anything like that, because as much as you think about growing plants, the thing that we need to be focusing on, is what we try and focus on here, is growing the soil. So microbiology in nature, if you've ever been in the woods and you wonder how do all these plants do so well, God designed them so that microbiology breaks everything down and creates all the nutrition that the plant needs from its own leaves, from its bark, from animals that come in, from other plants around it and other plants that are underneath it. So the mind-boggling statistic I'm about to tell you it's just overwhelming. But in one handful of topsoil, there are more living organisms than there are people on the planet. Over 10 billion. Every time I say it, it's just mind-staggering to think about. But it makes you realize that we really do need microorganisms. You know, a lot of us take probiotics and those things for our stomach. It's the same idea. You get the right kind of microbiology going on in your yard or in your garden, you solve your nutrition problem and a lot of your other problems as well. So this year we've produced tons and tons of food. Shelby and TJ have taken a lot of food. Sarah's purchased some of that. We've taken it to several different farmers markets and in Lake Wales, and then we've delivered some to people as well. It's been really good. We will next go, I think we'll go down here and go through. So this is a new screen house. So the idea here is trying to protect the plants from bugs, but also control rain. So plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, they all are very, very, very sensitive to leaf diseases. And a lot of those leaf diseases actually come from the soil. So when the rain hits the ground, it splashes up on the leaves, and the disease gets on the bottom leaves and starts working its way up the plant. Now you can try and beat that by taking those off, but you have to like take them off of one plant, wash your hands, and take them off another plant, wash your hands, and then make sure those leaves get burned. It's a real pain. So what Josh has done is he's created this environment where there's a plastic roof, so we don't get any rainwater on them. We water with drip irrigation, and so he actually dug down into the ground and put raised beds in the ground, so to speak. So the beds are actually in the ground so that the tomato plant if they were raised, then this would have to be so much higher and would catch the wind and stuff during hurricanes. So we're trying to keep the building lower, because I think he grew a different type of tomato this year. He made a climbing trellis. He also has another hanging trellis that he uses, where he puts little hooks on the wire up above and hangs the string down. And as the tomato plant grows, that little wire thing has a spool of string on it. And so the tomato plant can be slid down, and that is unspooled. So the tomato gets laid down and pulled up. I guess it grows up. So when I wish he had done it this year so you guys could see it, but when it's working properly, this tomato plant may be rooted here, but it's been moved down there. So it's laid on the ground as it grows, because tomato plants are actually perennial. They'll grow in the right conditions. So last year we had tomato plants from like October to May in here, and they produced way more plants than we can produce out here. I mean, tomatoes than we can out here. And then also, Josh says he likes the flavor of these so much better. And then this year he also put in zucchini and also cucumbers. And you guys want to walk in and see them, you can. Really good about trying to find varieties that work. We can't answer everybody's questions because we don't know where they're going. So Josh, I think in the early years, Josh was trying to do some of that for everybody, like trying different varieties and things. He still does some of that, but he narrows it down to what works here. It just makes sense.
Sure.
So we might start, like sweet potatoes, he started with, I think, almost 6 or 8 different varieties. And TJ, would you say he's narrowed it down to just a couple now of sweet potatoes?
Yes, one in particular.
Yeah, that tends to do really well. Others, people said, will do well here, but we haven't found that to be true. So he'll do like a season or two. Like I can show you in the vineyard, we've done the same thing with the grapes. Like I think he started with a dozen different varieties, and now there may be 3 or 4 out there. So we're narrowing it down to those that do really well.
And that's intended to stay that way long term, or
no, I mean,
move on and try.
We would be open to something else if somebody go, hey, you ought to try this one.
No, I'm not sure I'm communicating what I'm intending to. Is the vision in long term to have a established permanent? It'll always be this because this does well here, and this is an example of how to do this.
Some of both.
Okay.
Yeah, because you always want to be a learner, and you always want to be open to different things, especially when you're overseas. Now, there's a fine balance there. That's a good question, because overseas, when you ask a local farmer to try something different, you better know what you're doing. Because it's a difference between him feeding his family and them going hungry. Does that make sense?
And if it doesn't work, he's not going to listen to you next time around.
Absolutely. So it's a little bit of both. So we have to do a couple of things here. We have to do some experimenting so that they found out that blue monkeys taste really good and they can grow easily. We'll try those. But we also have to feed our staff and our students, and we have to, now we have a nursery crew and we want to sell something. So we have to have something that works. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit of both. Behind you guys is our cassava plantation. We harvested a ton of cassava this year. This is all the variety Togo, which is, I think, one of Josh's favorites. We have a new one that I hope we'll be trying that Josh found this year. It's a yellow variety, which tastes like you put butter in it, and it doesn't have anything in it but the plant and water. I mean, if you boil water, it tastes so good. Cassava is one of those things that we haven't used a lot here in the United States, but it's all over the place. The times we've gone to Honduras, there are literally hundreds of acres of cassava being grown, and it's a root that's harvested. It can be like potatoes. It can be ground up like flour. In Honduras, that's what a lot of it's used for. It's just taken to the mill and ground for flour, dried and ground for flour. These grow really, really fast. These have been here in the ground, about a month or so, TJ? And then there's some older ones there. Are those a different variety, or are they just being held?
Those are the same.
Same ones?
Yeah. Those are just, they started growing earlier than these.
They're ahead of these. And then behind you all is our urban garden. Doesn't look like the much. It's gone out for the season, and we'll get it ready for next year. But the idea is if this were a home in a place like Honduras or in Haiti, how could you grow in your yard and what could you grow? And so there's a lot of different varieties of containers. We have old rubber tires, we have a washing machine, we have 55-gallon drums cut in half, we have old metal roofing. There's even one garden back there, there's nothing but a stack of stones. And then over here, these areas that are with bricks, that's the idea of like a rooftop garden. What can you grow on a rooftop? And then we have actually some tropicals here that have survived really well. There's a carambola, which is star fruit there in the pot, and this is carambola or star fruit here. There's one tree on this side and one on the other side as well, and they've produced a lot of fruit for us this year. This is this cactus here, this vine cactus, is a type of dragon fruit. Some of you know dragon fruit. It's growing here. The garden, I forgot to point this out. This garden over here where the cassava is an example of a live fence. And an edible fence. So all the plants that are around this garden are edible. So there's chaya over there, also known as tree spinach. Chaya does have a little bit higher amounts of poison in them, like a lot of green plants do. Trying to think of the name of the cyanide. Thank you. So all green plants that we eat have cyanide in them. Our bodies can process some cyanide. That has a little higher amount, so you shouldn't eat that raw. You should cook it for just about 15 to 30 seconds, and then the cyanide, and I wouldn't drink the water from that, and just eat the greens. And then this is K-Tuk here. K-Tuk is high in protein, very nutritious, fast growing. This was cut almost back down to the ground this year, and it's already come back. And then over here we have nopales, and in the distance is moringa. Nopales come to us from Mexico. Different cultures, I have found, eat them different ways. So I have some of this at my house. I prefer to eat the new, fresh, tender shoots like these here. I would pick one of these, take it into my house, wash it, because it does have tiny, they call it spineless cactus or thornless cactus. It does have tiny little hairs on it. So I take it home and put it under some running water and wipe it with a cloth or with my hands. And then you chop that up and use it like you would bell peppers or green peppers. And you can see they grow really well and very easily. Now in Mexico, they typically take these older pads and they either chop them up and pickle them, or they skin them like a real thick one. They would skin it and grill it like a piece of meat. And then I had a young lady here on a tour from El Salvador, and she said her family candies them and makes a dessert out of them. Over here is an example of our hillside here. We have examples of erosion control. So this one is a sloping control idea using plants and using the contour. You'll see that this line kind of curves around, is following the natural contour, and that line of trees up there does the same thing. So you do that about every 3 meters depending on the degree of the slope, and then you can plant in between. So at the very top we have Mexican sunflower planted, so when the rain hits the ground it's already stopping a little bit and slowing down, and then as it picks up speed over that 3 meters it hits this berm of Lucena trees. Lucena also is a nitrogen depositor, so it's putting nitrogen in the soil in its roots and enriching the soil. As you can see, these trees have been here, gosh, they've probably been here 6 or 7 years now, and they're not any bigger than they are. I mean, it would get really, really big like the one on top of the hill there. But we keep cutting it back every year. We use that to feed to the animals, and we also drop the limbs on the upside to help build up kind of a biomass on the ground, so that it's feeding the soil but also helping slow down the water. And then the water would pick up speed again as it comes down here towards the bottom, and then it hits the vetiver grass. Vetiver has really no value other than the fact that it can block water running down very, very well. It's used in Haiti for this purpose, and in Honduras it also is used for denoting property lines. The reason is because the roots of the grass are like tiny worms. There are thousands and thousands of roots, so it's very hard to get up. You have to have a shovel or like a backhoe or something to dig it up with, but you can separate it out very easily, and it multiplies. And another side piece to it is that goats really don't like to eat it. They'll only eat it if like there's a drought and there's nothing else to eat. So that makes it a good thing to have like around your gardens or whatever. So this is an example of erosion control. We talked earlier about dry stone stacking. That's what this is here. So we have gardens all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom. And this is just dry stone. Of course, we don't have stones in Florida, so we use both broken concrete. And then over behind you all is our duck pond and our tilapia ponds. And we've been, JC has been growing plants to feed the fish and also feed the ducks. So you see those that are blooming over there. And he also has been growing duckweed. He'll be growing some more this summer. You can see an example of some in the ponds here. And the ducks are khaki, most of them are khaki Campbells. They lay as many eggs or sometimes more than chickens do. And people who, I don't know why, maybe you know the answer to this, but people who bake prefer duck eggs. I don't know why that is, but they do.
So things don't quack up.
I guess that's what it is. And so we raise tilapia in 2 of the above ground ponds and also in the concrete pond. And we clean them out with our students and staff about twice a year. Here's an example of zero graze. You saw JC come by with a bunch of tree limbs and things that he'd cut. He dropped off some here for these goats. This is the idea that if you are in an area like Haiti or Honduras where they have a lot of mountains and they really don't need to be grazing their goats on the hillsides because they cause erosion and they eat the trees and tear up the soil. If you can talk a farmer into spending a little bit of money, that's the hard part. But you could grow stuff and cut it and bring it to the animals. That way they're still getting the food they would get out there running around, but they're not damaging your property or a neighbor's property or damaging the mountainside. So the other thing that we added here too was the idea of a catchment underneath. So we put metal underneath, we catch all the manure and the urine, and it can also catch all the leaves and things that fall on the ground from when they eat. And that can be used for composting. And then the other thing, I don't know that we do it yet, but this could be dried and we could chop it up and use it for mulch as well. So this is an example. We're growing some Napier grass here, and this can be cut and fed to them as well. It's already been cut back some this year. It'll really take off once the rains come, and then we have more back here as well. This is the greenhouse. The water from the fish pond flows through here. And this is the closest thing, Nate, we come to any kind of hydroponics. I had a woman here the other day that is known in North Florida as the female George Washington, modern day George Washington Carver, and she walked in the other day and she goes, "Wow, that's really overgrown. That makes me feel better. Mine at home is worse than that." Then over here, you heard me talk a while ago about our vineyard. This is our vineyard. On the other end, there are a few things in here that are flowering and put it on fruit. You can see some tiny ones coming in here. These are these are a red variety down the other side, or a typical green bunching variety. I'll show you. This vineyard was built by students. This was a student project in conjunction with working hand in hand with Josh. He wanted to build a vineyard at that time. This is probably about 7 or 8 years old now. And so the students, they focused on concrete construction and how to make concrete poles. They designed the forms and everything themselves and worked with Mr. Bird, who was teaching at the time from Warner. And they came up with a whole system, and they made all of these posts. Of course, there were some that didn't do so well and broke, but these have been here ever since. And these are not screwed in anyway, they're just leaning. They came up with an angle piece that they put into their form, same form they made these with, and made these angle pieces on these other short ones. And they're just in the ground and leaning up against the post and causing tension so that it'll hold up the plants. The weeds would usually be a lot worse this time of year, but we brought the geese in, and I'm assuming JC's probably going to bring them back in the summertime. But the geese are over there now, but we had them in here and had this surrounded with the invisible fence or the white fencing there, and they took it all the way to the ground. When they left, everything looked just like this by the time they left. So of course they're not only eating the weeds, but they're also fertilizing while they're here as well.
Are these names on the post?
They are the original varieties, like I talked about before, but I think some of them have been changed because of the question that you asked earlier. Josh is shrinking that down to different varieties. So here are the green ones, the bunching grapes here. You can see them here and here. They're really beautiful this year. They're
Wow.
gonna have a really good
I
crop.
haven't looked at them in a while. Those
What's
look
that?
really nice. I haven't seen them.
You haven't seen them in a while.
Nope.
And then the red varieties that are mostly over there, the red ones, they'll be ready later in the summer, getting close to fall. These will be ready before those.
I had no idea that they weren't all the same time. You know, I mean,
Oh.
probably not just based on color, I'm sure, but
No, it has to do
I
with
realize there were
varieties.
varieties
Yeah. So
that
these
ripen
are
at different times of year. That's
these
interesting.
Nate, these green bunching ones or white bunching ones, however they want to refer to them, they're more closely related to what you would call like a Concord grape or what you eat at home. These up back here, the red ones, are more related to wild ones. So that's part of the reason that there's a big difference in the timing. These are what we call muscadines.
I was going to
back
ask
here.
if muscadines are really grapes or if they're different.
They're a
Right.
relative.
Yeah.
They're a relative. Then we won't go in, but the rabbits are here. Just to save time, we have rabbits here. I think there's some turkeys in some of those containers outside. And rabbits are a very fast-growing, really good source of protein. Out here, there's a variety of different plants being grown here. These are fruit trees. This is a mulberry here. It was just loaded with fruit a few weeks ago. These are pomegranates. And I think there's several different varieties of pomegranates out here. And there's just a couple of things I wanted to show you real quick. So we won't have time to go out and see the pig tractor. We'll see one as we go into the village. But we have, you know, I showed you the chicken tractors. We also have pig tractors. They're a metal cage that the pigs are in, and we can move around. And this is an example of planting behind them. So we have the pigs here. We move them in a straight line. We come back in and we plant behind them. So they've already dug up all the soil. They've fertilized it. We did the same thing here. And then there's a really good example over there. I believe those are figs being grown on the left, and I believe it's cassava on the right over there on the other side of the fence. So did the same thing over there. Pigs came through, and we planted behind them. JC and I have been talking about doing some annuals like that maybe next year. He did kind of an experiment here where he put them in here and then he just threw seeds out behind them. And these were all winter brassicas like broccoli and turnips and things. Never watered them, and I went out there, I got a couple turnips a week and they were never watered or anything. So maybe next year we'll get a little more organized with it and actually water them. And the other thing I told him is if you want to water them and you wanted to use it, you could just turn the pigs back around once everything is growing and put them back on it, and then they have something to eat again. So the geese are over there. They are pretty aggressive. We were talking about them the other day. Shelby does not like them. They are pretty aggressive. But that is one of the benefits of geese. They are policemen. Mm-hmm. So if you hear a rooster crowing like we did earlier, the roosters can crow for whatever reason all day long. No real reason. And turkeys can gobble for whatever reason. If you hear the geese going nuts, there's usually something going on. The guinea fowl are the same way. If you hear either one of those making racket, either somebody's out there or an animal is out there or something, because they just go nuts whenever something's bothering you. You've seen us on Facebook talking about the new bovine pastures. This is it right here. We finally got it in. JC and I talked the other day. Ben's going to get some hay. We're trying to not all the grass. He didn't think the grass was good enough, but I think it's good enough to go. But we're going to buy a little bit of hay today or tomorrow. Ben's going to run and get some and put a roll of hay in there. We're going to move them over. But we just got that put in this year, just a couple months ago, and one of our students from Warner that was a student here 2 years ago.
Abigail?
Abigail.
Yeah.
She did a birthday party for Buford, and Dwayne helped her with that, and they raised most of the funds for that new enclosure. And we had
Now, do you use the horse fence because you want to put goats in there too, ultimately, or?
no, it's because of the bovines.
Oh, they would go. You need that 2x4?
It's not necessarily the size, it is the height that you're looking at, and the strength. That's a much stronger fence, because we're having problems. We have to repair and do some fencing up here, because
What is that 6x6 over there? That
it's hog wire,
Hog wire. Okay.
so it's graduated hog wire. So the problem is with the shorter wire, we're also gonna put a strand of barbed wire on top of this just in case, because this is what Buford does.
He
Puts his
just
head
bends
on
it down.
pushes
Yeah.
it down. Yeah.